Hello, this is Dead Serious, a show about short horror stories worthy of discussion. I'm Dead Palate, and I'm too sober not to taste this chicken. Today we're taking a look at Fleming's Storage Unit, number 131, Implanted Images, by All Around Player. Well, as a follow All Around Player, I am interested to see what you are up to. This person's favorite creepypastas are Pen Pals Trust, The Seer of Possibilities, When God Blinks, and 123 Safety Street. So we got some interesting choices there that are kind of all over the place. This person has an eclectic sense of horror, and so I want to see how that pans out in this story. Again, we're just going through the Fleming storage units one by one, cleaning them out and seeing what's inside. Let's get right into it. I can't really describe what I felt as I opened the unit. My mind seemed numb, just like my fingers as I removed the cold padlock and rolled up the metal sheet. In that quick respite, I cursed myself under my breath for not bringing gloves. Then I stared at the unit's contents. A large stack of sealed boxes and hoarded furniture lay shoved against the back wall. My mind went blank again. Alright, so here we're having a person who is numb to it all. Numb is used both literally in terms of their fingers and in terms of their mind as well. And this is a task that they were not prepared for in some way, not just by not bringing gloves, but by the fact that, they got this letter out of the blue, saying that they need to come here. So perhaps whatever it is they're going to be unpacking, isn't something they're ready to confront yet, whatever that is, however that is, blah, blah, blah. But I think that that's the sense that we're getting from this first paragraph. Very generic wording, and we're already kind of getting a lot out of that wording. So that's valuable. That's an important skill. Was I really going to do this? Was I really going to loot through my father's possessions in his absence? Even with him being gone for more than half of my life, it just felt wrong. Digging through mementos left behind, unearthing memories I long since forgotten, and remembering what my father had done with what my mother and I had been through since then. I felt like finding out whose bright idea was to stick a guy they killed in this facility and strangle them myself. Okay, so this person, I'm hoping the narrator, not the author, is confused, because the person who, the dead body they found is a person who was living in here. And I guess if they don't have those kind of details here, they just know that they found a dead body in here. They don't necessarily know that the dead body was strangled inside the unit by themselves. But bearing all of that in mind, being charitable, we have an idea of why this person doesn't want to go through this stuff. Their father's possessions, they have been out of their life for more than half their life. And let's find out why and what our narrator has been through with their mother. But I stood still, slipping the lock and the key in my jacket and swapping it for a cell phone. I dialed a number and listened to the phone ringing. I began talking when my mom's voice hit on the line. "Hi, Mom. I'm at the storage facility you told me about." I started pacing around the unit in circles as I talked. "I know you explained it before, but what did you want me to take out?" "Again, Matt? I told you this 2 days ago," she exclaimed. "Did Ron forget to remind you?" No. He did. He told me. Ron told me to pick up everything here while he talking to the moving company. I just don't know what I should take out," I quickly explained. Little bit of a typo there, but overall we're progressing the dialogue, getting an idea of what's happening. Well, good," she said, still a bit annoyed. "Mom went off to tell me. Your Aunt May and Ron's brother put some of their things in there. They don't want to leave everything there because of the incident." "Great. I got the role of playing delivery boy. What should I do with..." And then he gets cut off. "You can go take whatever your father left behind," she interrupted. I honestly don't want to keep anything from him. Ron wanted to collect most of it before we move moved, but there should be some stuff in there you want too, right? I glanced back at the furniture and a sealed box labeled VHS tapes and video games. There are a couple things here I want to look over. Yeah, okay. Very millennial mindset right there, of course. The video games and the VHS tapes. I love VHS tapes. I love them. I love the graininess of them. They make me so happy. I have a giant collection of dubbed and subbed animes from the late 80s, early 90s on VHS, and I regularly take them out and watch them. There's something nice about that quality, the sound of the VCR. Just mentioning VCRs takes me down a little rabbit hole, but I try to avoid them as much as possible in terms of using them to put the horror on the VHS tapes. And I don't know why I'm going on this tangent. It's just interesting to me. VHS tapes are fun. They're very nostalgic for me. Well, be extra sure of what you want to take out. The police will take everything you leave inside the unit by tomorrow. I really don't want to explain to Miles and Aunt May that the police took control of their precious photos. Have fun loading everything up. Gee, thanks. You're welcome. Okay, love you, Matt. See you tonight, I hope. Yeah, I'm still need to sort things out with the landlord before I get settled into the apartment. Okay, see you tonight. Oh, goddammit, my phone always fucking turns on when I don't want it to. Why can't I turn off that feature of it being like, bakook? Anyway, with all of that out of the way, let's unpack some of this dialogue here. I'm trying to figure out what age range our narrator is in, because the phrasing, great, I get to play the role of the delivery boy. That's really kind of an immature thing to say, so I'm assuming we're on the young side, but enough to where we have moved out, but there are things to sort out with the landlord, so maybe this is a new arrangement that is just happening to coincide with the storage units closing. Few questions, not necessarily bad questions or good questions, just things that my mind is wondering. So let's see if we get any answers out of that. Another shot of cold came in when I hung up. It got me out of my rhythm, reminding me the place it was and how miserable it all is. I shuffled over to the shutter and closed the door halfway down. It stayed up when I let go, thankfully. That should help keep out the cold, I thought. I dug out a small flashlight from the glove compartment and got to work. From the glove compartment. Okay, I guess they just went under the little half-closed door to the car, got something out of the glove compartment, went back under the door. Okay. I was not in the mood to look through every single box right there, especially with the place closing real soon. So I started unloading everything in the unit into my car, shifting the shutter up and down in transport. Boxes and boxes began to pile up, flooding the whole car, from the truck to the passenger seat, which I probably should have seen that coming from the size of the box pile. However, most of them, if not all, the boxes were open. Little clunky, that probably should be, however, most of them, if not all, were open. No, maybe it's right. I'm confused. Anyway, digressing, I am getting really easily distracted on this one. The sides of the box came off several times, blocking my vision. And when I got tired of moving the shutters so many times, I got caught on the shutter lip and crashed to the floor. It was not a fun experience moving things out. Okay, so this paragraph really does explain the minutia of this manual labor that is very boring. This is probably a person who isn't used to this kind of stuff, perhaps has a sedentary lifestyle, because they're kind of being whiny about this, and I like that. I like that this is, a character who is, dispossessed of this whole thing. There wasn't anything much in that box I dropped, really. Some old VHS tapes from before Dad went missing. Most were recordings of football games and History Channel documentaries like Civil War, both the World Wars, and other stuff similar to that. I shoved that box into the passenger seat. Okay, so those are things, that a dad would like, History Channel documentaries and football games and those kinds of things. And here we're finding out that the dad went missing. We don't necessarily know of his own volition, whether it's I'm going out to get cigarettes thing and then he just never came back, or whether, something ominous happened, or, and in addition to that, we don't know what kind of conclusion the family came to on that as well. When I moved onto the furniture, which there was no room in the car. Are you serious? I yelled aloud. My car was filled with Dad's old stuff, and rearranging everything in the car could only fit a taxidermied deer head, but only on the front dashboard, however. If I was going to get the furniture out, I would have to go all the way back to my house, dump these boxes somewhere into the house, then come back to get the rest. Fucking joy. So this person does have their own house, apparently not an apartment, an actual house. I quickly locked up the unit, keys safely tucked deep away in my pockets, and carefully got into the car and drove away. I passed by several other people rooting around their units. Most everyone kept a blank, scornful expression on their face, going back and forth. What seemed to be mild inconvenience to me was really a huge burden weighted on everyone who fed money into this business. Feels great when the police screw you over, huh? Okay, so this person sees that apparently they are not the only one who is, inconvenienced by all of this, and sees that other people are even more inconvenienced than they are. I slowly drove out of the storage facility, passing by the plaza, and traveled all the way home. 15 minutes later, I pulled up to the driveway. My stepfather was sitting on the front porch waiting for me. My sour mood from earlier dissipated as I climbed out. Ron walked down to the driveway in front of the garage. Did you get everything out all right? I dropped a few boxes, but they're all in good condition, I laughed. I slammed the car door shut and opened the garage door. Heh, that's good to hear. Hopefully it was one of your things, he joked back. You wish. No, it was one of my, my dad's old VHS tapes here. So grammatical error there. Again, I feel weird pointing these out, but these grammatical errors a lot of these things are works in progress. We're going to work to improve all these stories together and get rid of these errors. But even if it sounds like I'm nitpicking, I'm pulling that up because it is important that we fix that eventually. I grabbed the same box from the trunk and handed it over to him. Ron glanced inside and chuckled. Henry was always a Grizzlies fan. He placed it down on the car roof and reached inside to grab another box. His face changed to a look of confusion. Did you look through them all? Wait, what? Ron pulled out a box that was labeled clothes in black marker. The tape was ripped open. The tape is ripped open. It's actually this way for all of them. Did you open them? He set the boxes down on the far end of the garage. Yeah, no, it was like that when I opened the unit. Every single box was already open. I was going to ask if you did it, I explained. He shook his head. Last time I went there was when we dropped off your aunt's things. He pondered for a while. Maybe the police? He suggested. What? Why would the police look through everyone's units? Well, they have to make sure that nothing else is found. You know that they found a body. Everyone shouldn't have to keep reminding me. Not like I didn't catch wind of it from the news or mom. I'm going to put the boxes in the garage to look them over. Does that sound all right? Here, I'll help. So we have a very dialogue-heavy story, and that's a nice departure from a lot of these stories where they'll spice in a little bit of dialogue here and there, or maybe, like myself, I struggle to get dialogue into stories because, not because I think I'm particularly bad at writing dialogue. I just get caught up in the minutia of the story and then forget that giving characters some dialogue really does help further their personality. A question I do have, and it might help, might not, but this is just me. I think we should explicitly say who Ron is. whether Ron is the new person in our narrator's mother's life, partner or something, or whether they're a family friend, who is Ron necessarily? I think we're assuming that it's the mother's new partner, but having a little more explicit detail on that would help us understand what the relationship is. It seems as though our narrator and Ron get along perfectly well. They banter. That's a nice little detail. And now we're getting this detail of something amiss. And every horror story should start off not with something necessarily being drastically wrong, but I think oftentimes it's better when something is just a little wrong. Just a little wrong. And that's what we have here. Just this tip of, these boxes are open for some reason. And it's like, well, I didn't think anything of it. Well, yeah, but they were closed the last time I was there. But are you sure you didn't open them? This is the beginning of something that could snowball into something worse. We continue to load the boxes into the garage in silence. We stack the boxes flush against the far wall. Once the car was completely empty, the garage was flooded with cardboard. It's funny that when we were done, the garage looked identical to the storage unit. That's a nice detail. The same concrete floor and gray walls. With the boxes covered up the shelves of tools and the partially overflowed room. Just the same way it looked when I opened the unit this afternoon. Everything was in the garage. I breathed a sigh of relief. I locked my car and closed the garage door. I sat down on the floor, crossing my legs. Ron and I grabbed a random box and began working our way down the pile. Most of the boxes we opened were Dad's old clothes and belongings. Only a select few of the boxes contained something interesting in a way. One box contained a bunch of sports merchandise from the Montana Grizzlies, jersey, t-shirts, cups and mugs, and at one point I found a pillow and a blanket designed after the logo and mascot. Dad would only use this stuff down in his man cave when the Grizzlies were playing. Waking up in the middle of the night from screaming in the basement was not a good experience to relive in my head. I'm not sure what to make of that. Dad would only use this stuff in his man cave when the Grizzlies were playing. Waking up in the middle of the night from screaming. Okay. So they were screaming, yeah, Grizzlies, go sports ball. Then I found my things. For some reason, years ago, I'm guessing around when Dad went missing, I put some of the things that I didn't want inside the unit. Football and baseball trophies circa 2002-2003. A bunch of Nintendo 64 cartridges and PlayStation titles I long since forgotten. For some reason, there were a lot of sports-related things in here more than anything else, when really I distinctly hated them as a kid. So we are establishing that this is a nerdy person as opposed to a sports ball person. After searching for nearly half an hour, it didn't take long to get to the painful memories. I stood up to show Ron one of the fascinating things I found to him, only he was gloomily turning through the pages of a book. You know what? I'm starting to think that maybe Ron is just a roommate or a partner of... See, it's unclear. We need to know who Ron is, I think. What is that? I walked over to see what he was looking at. Oh, Ron said, disheartened. He snapped out of his thoughts to me. He handed me the book over. It's just a photo album with Henry and your mother. I flipped through and witnessed all of these happy photos of smiling faces on each page, goofing off in random places together on dates, and pictures of me growing up. I turned back to the first page. On it was a picture of my parents and Ron at what looked like a high school dance. I looked up. You knew my dad? He smiled meekly. Yeah, we all met in high school, and Henry grew a particular liking to your mother. When everyone graduated, they started dating and eventually married. Okay, so we're starting to get some details on Ron. Did you have a crush on her? I meant before Mom dated my dad. I handed the photo album back. I had a small crush, but she was obviously only interested in Henry. I didn't really have a chance at the time. They just clung to each other almost every second they met. They followed each other through college. I was pretty jealous. I couldn't get a word in edgewise. He paused, then abruptly continued. 12 years, if I'm counting it right. 12 years of dating and marriage, and he throws it all out by finding another woman. Your mother called me first, you know. His voice wavered. Before calling her friends, she called me. Out of everyone she knew, she called me and told me everything. Tell me how you're supposed to calm a person down like that down. She was just used and betrayed by someone she knew for years. A person that even I knew. What do you even tell them? He covered his face with his shirt and tried his best not to cry. He slammed the book shut back into the box. Ron shakily stood up. I'm sorry. He took a long breath and turned to the box I was standing over. What did you want to show me? He wiped away his tears. Okay, so before we get into whatever that is, Ron just went on this giant diatribe. Apparently, friend of the mother, but I don't know if there's a partnership here yet, whether they're, sexual partners or married or what. That is a big burning question I have, and it's something that they should have established earlier on, I think. But bearing that in mind, we do get details about this. I'm not sure whether Henry, the father in this scenario, finding another woman is why he went missing or what, or whether Ron is clearly very emotional about this and very jealous. So maybe Ron is a murderer and has something to do with this later on in the story. We'll see what happens. He wiped away his tears, his eyes. It's only really. I pulled the box over. It was filled with VHS-C tapes, home family tapes. Many were labeled on certain events. Christmas 2003, wedding reception, baby shower, etc. I want to watch a few of them before everyone leaves tomorrow. Ron slowly took out an old camcorder from the house and gave it to me. You can keep it. I doubt we'll use it anytime soon. I'm going to pack up for tomorrow. Do you want me to help? No, I'm fine. I just want some time alone for a bit. So these events are obviously making Ron emotional as well as our narrator. With that, everything was done. We searched through all the boxes and sorted them into neat piles. Ron left to continue packing for moving day. I, in the meanwhile, carried the camcorder and tapes into my room. I popped the tapes in and watched the films unravel. My films screamed and cheered at the Super Bowl played on the TV basement. My embarrassing birthday parties, Christmas mornings, and school football games. I watched through them all, and my dad was in every single one, switching to back and forth to being a parent to laughing around mom and their friends. In most of the tapes, I was mad or upset around him. I was complaining about not getting a game I wanted for Christmas or leaving the football team. I was an ungrateful brat up until he vanished. Was I one of the reasons he decided to leave my mom? Was I even sad when he went missing? It made me feel even worse, planning to sell all of his things. I prematurely shut the camera off after the screen went black. Okay, so those I think are really important emotions to have. I think a lot of people have dealt with that kind of thing. You saying like you get into a fight with someone. Hopefully most people haven't dealt with this, but this is a very common scenario. It's like, oh, I hate you, and you get into a fight with somebody, and then something tragic happens, and you wonder if you'll ever get the chance to say you're sorry, and you wonder if somehow you caused it. You get all these irrational and possibly rational feelings of guilt that you have to sort through. So that's a very realistic thing. Here we have a multi-paragraph break. And so maybe, and it says the next day was hectic. So this is moving forward in time a little bit. The next day was hectic. We were scrambling around, loading things into the moving truck and meticulously checking that they wouldn't leave anything behind. Mom locked up the house and spent a little too long on saying goodbye. Mom and my stepfather got into their car and drove away, out of the state. So stepfather, is that Ron? Okay. But we are getting that the moving out and the closing of the storage units are just happening to coincide. Okay. I spent most of the afternoon selling and donating the stuff I didn't want and dropping off Aunt May's package. I stumbled back to the storage unit at 3. The wind was still howling the day before when I rolled up the door. Should it be like the day before? I went in the back corner was the furniture, all of which came from Dad's man cave in the basement. The armchair, couch, a glass coffee table, 2 small end tables, lamp, and a rolled-up rug were laying on top of one another. I backed my car up close to the door and popped the trunk. Today was the last day I could take this stuff out, and hopefully I'll put everything should be in since I discovered behind me. Okay, that's a little messed up. It says everything I since discovered behind me. Oh no, it's perfect. Okay, I'm just an idiot. This is all good. Like these details. These are the big things that they had trouble moving before. Our characters seeming a little bit more mature now. They have to move out on their own, and that's probably a new experience for them. And I like that we're incorporating the details of how the weather are, because those are important notes, especially when you're moving. I grabbed the rug to roll it out onto the floor, but it got caught somehow between the table and the chair. I dropped it, where it resoundingly crashed, and a bunch of white, clear particles came out onto the floor. I picked up one by hand. Glass? I unfurled the rug out, but there wasn't anything. I shook the rug, and more glass fell out. It was stuck in the fibers across its surface, invisible. It wasn't just the glass that was strange. One end of the rug was cut as well. A large section of it was just gone in one straight smooth slice. Ooh. Again, could be nothing, could be something. Alright, I was getting a bit concerned at this point. It was too unnatural to exist, so what was going on? I began looking the furniture more closely, and more oddities appeared. Little grammar problem. The glass coffee table was stripped down. It was supposed to be a black wooden frame with a thick sheet of glass covering the top, but that was gone. One bulb from the 2 lamps were gone, along with a crooked lampshade. Then the armchair. It was a fucking dark brown. I found a fucking dark brown stain on the leg of the armchair. It was just sticking close to the ground, concealing itself. The stain was small, almost blending in with the wood's color, but it was smudged, dragged down the floor. Okay, so the phrasing of it looked too unnatural to exist, so what was going on? That's a little weird. I guess what they're saying is that it felt surreal. That's kind of what they're getting at. I'm not opposed to a little bit of weird, clunky wording if it is a character that's kind of lost for words, as I think our narrator is in this case. And then we have this dark brown stain, could be ominous. Let's continue on. And it's important to note that our story is wrapping up, but we haven't had a whole lot of explicit horror here. It's all been very mundane, real-life problems, and I like seeing that kind of thing. This author's kind of underselling what could be something more tragic. What? My mind blinked as I stared down to it. Is that really blood? I yelled. No, that must be paint, right? Why is that there? What happened here? What happened to my dad? I turned hysterical, pacing around the unit. My mind was racing with possibilities. I calmed myself down. The glass, it must have come from the table, but how did the table get broken? I pulled at my hair. Why can't I remember? My memory blanks before Ron came into my mother's life. Is my dad dead? Or was this a fight? Why did the police not see this? If they didn't see this, how can I even know? So we haven't finished yet, but with this paragraph, I feel like it almost might be better for this paragraph to be multiple paragraphs. There's a lot happening here, and maybe we want to, spread that out a little bit because there's a lot to chew on. There is the possibility that Ron was doing something here, and this person our narrator's having trouble remembering stuff. Not sure why that is exactly. And I don't know why they're jumping to the possible conclusion that Ron had something to do with that. Maybe a sixth sense is kind of telling this. The sixth sense is kind of a real thing. It's the unprocessed information that the other five senses haven't yet processed. And so you're kind of coming to conclusions that you can't necessarily understand why, but your senses are picking them up. So maybe there's something along those lines there. Not sure why we're kind of implicating Ron all of a sudden. I scrambled back to the car. I pulled the camcorder out and popped a tape inside, the Super Bowl game that everyone was watching in the basement. The furniture was in full view, clear as day. The glass table was dead on in the center of the rug. The couch was flush against the wall, with both lamps side by side. The stained armchair was the furthest away from the rug. The missing strip of fabric was closer to one of the ends of the table with the lamps. Everything started to click. Okay, so everything in the room is being recontextualized by the camera, and we're seeing the possible aftermath of that. That's a nice detail. Now, only one question plagued my mind, which I know I would never get the answer to. Did I really hate my dad? My thoughts echoed across the concrete. Did he not want to stay in love with my mom and just leave? Did I cause all this? Even his disappearance? My hands clenched. My knuckles grew bone white. I threw my hands up and smashed the camcorder against the floor. The pieces shattered, scattering across the room. I slammed against the floor and cried. I cried for half an hour. But the longer I wailed in misery, the more wind outside drowned out the sound and helped drive my thoughts away. So we have one more paragraph, but I think that this author is struggling with a problem that I often struggle with, which is, if you want horror to be real life, and sometimes you don't want a complete, concrete ending, then you have to find a way to wrap up the end without telling everyone explicitly, this is the answer. Because the real horror of real life is not knowing. Sometimes you just don't know. But this author wants the narrator to not know, but wants us to know that Ron did it. And I think that they're kind of struggling to figure this out. And I don't necessarily know if there's some sort of supernatural power going on here, that they're having these, memories fading from their mind, or what's going on here. But that is a problem that I think this story needs to tackle and solve in some manner. I left the plaza that day, and I haven't returned. I collected all the furniture in silence and threw them into the dump outside of the town. I only left a few things behind that day. I put back the trophies in the game I received before, along with the tapes, and the photo albums in the storage unit, where the Fleming storage unit facility almost completely faded away from my mind. My mom and stepfather suffered from what my dad did to us. They only had themselves to talk to each other about him, so I couldn't bring up what I found again. Even though I know what could have happened, I don't want to break that up. So when I locked the door and threw away the key, I knew at that time that I did not want to remember anything. Okay, so I'm getting from this last paragraph, I get that they think that Ron did it for some reason, but maybe they are dealing with some sort of traumatic issue to where they can't remember. That is my interpretation, and I'm interested to see what other people have to say down in the comments, perhaps on the Discord, but there is an issue here that I think we have to navigate, which again is, how do you navigate not knowing, but also wanting to give some sort of answer? And that's a hard line to kind of navigate. And this story is struggling with that in the same way that I as an author struggle with that. It's a very relatable problem. Let me know if you have some sort of solutions to that in general, not even just to the story. Use the story as an example. But if you have some writing advice for that, that would be excellent. And maybe I'll pin some comments down below if they come up with some interesting solutions. Now, if you enjoyed that, consider helping out the community and supporting my channel. You can support the community by conversing in the comments below or on the Discord linked in the description. You can also support me by subscribing to the channel, following me on the social media, links down below, and pledging to my Patreon, which is also down below. Thank you so much for your time, and now on to our sponsor of this non-moment in time, which is Persian rugs. Persian rugs, bigger than Meowth rugs.